And we're going to start with the game that we're going to be at Saturday. Auburn at Penn State. The Nittany Lions, the Fighting Jesse Myers, if you will, favored by 6 points or 4.5 points. It's all over the place. But the Late Kick Renaissance Tour, as you see on the screen, is headed into town. This is a Saturday night game. It's 7:30 Eastern. It's on ABC. I think we need to do something here. I think we need to eliminate the fringes from both sides of the conversation. As is usually the case when you're building up to a big game, if you go to an Auburn radio station or you go to Nittany Lions message board, you're going to read some fringe opinions. And a lot of the fringe opinions sound something like this. Maybe you're comparing the quarterbacks, or you're comparing the offensive line or the running back stables, or just the overall talent rosters. Anyone who's saying any of these position units or overall rosters is better and it's not even close, just dismiss that. Because everything's going to be close in this game. Everything is close in this game. The only decided advantage, the only overwhelming advantage, period, that either team is going to enjoy here is home field advantage. We have baked, I want to say, 4.75 points of home field into our model's number. It's one of the highest overall home field grades that we ever give. That is bumped up about 3/4 of a point based on a normal year, even in this setting. White out at night, but it matters. Home field matters in college football way more than the NFL, and it's really going to matter here. So it is fair if you want to tell me Auburn goes into this at a disadvantage. That's the default setting because you have to overcome those external factors, and they will be immense. Again, if you're listening on the podcast, you know what that whiteout environment's about. If you're watching, you're seeing right now. It's as an insane an atmosphere as you're going to experience on the face of the college football planet. And I've been to LSU at night. I've been to all these big stadiums in the South. I have not been able to experience what you're watching right now or what you're listening to me describe if you're listening on pod. We're looking forward to this on Saturday night. So Brian Harsin at Auburn, a big challenge here. But it's a big challenge to be a head coach at a major program either way. What is the first thing that when you take over a job, when Brian Harsin came into Auburn and he took over, he had to do one thing before anything else. After you do that introductory press conference, you got to do a healthy inventory, a self-scout, if you will. You got to know what you have. You're not looking at your opponents. You don't even know who you are yet. So you got to do a healthy inventory of your program. You learn what you got. You learn what you don't have and what you need down the road. But you got to know strengths and weaknesses because they don't give you 5 years. You're going to have to play the season that fall. And then you got to game plan accordingly. So they go into this game on the road at Penn State, and a simple Auburn self-scout right now by that coaching staff would indicate, and I think it's fair to say it, you cannot trust Bo Nix on the road to this point in his career in these kinds of environments. And there have only been a few of them. I'm going to grant you that. I was at the last one. I was on the field in Gainesville when they tried to go in there and they tried to compete with Florida, and they never gave themselves a great shot because Bo Nix at quarterback did not give them a great shot. Now, that offensive line didn't help him. It was not a solely Bo Nix problem, but, that was an afternoon that I think is burned in a lot of Auburn fans' minds. So if Brian Harsin and his staff have done a healthy self-scout, they have to have some trepidation. And then you game plan accordingly. If that's a weakness, that doesn't mean you wave the white flag. It'd blend in Saturday night anyway, so it's no use. You just game plan accordingly. And so an Auburn-Penn State scout would indicate even with that relative weakness, we may still be able to win this game because we may be able to 2-to-1 run-to-pass ratio our way to a fourth quarter competitive ball game. The important data point here for Auburn is the Penn State-Wisconsin game. It was the first game of the year. It was one of the first big kickoffs on that Saturday. You all remember it. You need to go back and you need to dive into that one if you've already forgotten it. Because here were the edges. Penn State beat Wisconsin that day. I think 16-10 was the final. 29-11 first down edge. Not for Penn State, for Wisconsin. 29-11. How about 365 to 297 yardage edge? Not for Penn State, for Wisconsin, the losing team. Just because our buddy Parker will want to bite my head off, I'm going to tell you about time of possession in that game. 43-17 in favor of Wisconsin. I love time of possession. Love it. May not mean anything, but I love it. 85-51 total plays, edge Wisconsin. But there was one category that Wisconsin fell short in, and that was turnovers. And they were -3, and that was the difference in the game. The reason I'm bringing these numbers up is not to replay that game. The reason I'm bringing those numbers up It's because Brian Harsin and his staff, if they look at that, they could reasonably say, hold up a second. You're telling me we don't have to throw for 450 yards here. We don't have to precision execute through the air. We just have to be able to do something along the lines of this. We can do this. I mean, we got a better tailback than anyone Wisconsin has in Tank Bigsby, and that's accurate. We can do this. And so it's not insurmountable. That's why this number is single digits. It's inside a touchdown. Penn State's a very good team. You're going to see in the JP poll a little bit later just how good I think they are. But there's certainly vulnerability here, and this is not a team built to get a ton of margin on you unless you hand them the ball more than they deserve to have it, or in other words, turnovers. And so with that in mind, I think the key to this thing is Bo Nix road versus home. Yes, that's going to be talked about ad nauseum, and it should be. And you've seen the splits floating around. If you haven't, Jesse will eventually show you a slider of it. I think I kind of went out of order. But aside from Bo Nix, another big-time key in this game is which one of these run games can force the other offensive coordinator to blink. Because I don't think that we run a great big risk of seeing anyone bomb away early in this thing. I know every time you go into a game and you expect it to be called very conservatively, and you expect a rock fight, and you expect sledgehammer mode in both ways, that you think, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll come out ultra aggressive. Maybe we'll throw the ball a lot on first down. Sometimes that's true. I really don't think it's the case here. If it is, you know what kind of passes we're looking at. And it's not ripping them 15 yards, far hash outs over the middle or anything like that. That's not happening. What we will see is we'll see a team in Penn State trust their stable of running backs. We'll see Auburn trust Tank Bigsby. You need to also remember, Bo Nix isn't a 5'4" 40 guy. He can run too. And then we're going to see which ground game put some early points on the board and which side, therefore, gets a little bit rattled and then all of a sudden realizes, uh-oh, we got to catch up. We got to throw the ball a little bit. Because Auburn wants their secondary to be a difference in this game. Well, as long as they're running at 2-to-1 ratio at you, doesn't really matter. Penn State wants that crowd to be in the game. Well, as long as they're running at 2-1 ratio, then your edge rushers don't really matter all that much. And that play clock doesn't really matter all that much, and communication doesn't matter as much. And to be honest with you, an effective ground game, 1st and 10, 2nd and 5, 3rd and 1, move the chains, it has the tendency to take even the most raucous crowds out of the game. But if you're having to play from behind, all of a sudden the script kind of flips a little bit, for either side, really. So let's take a look at what the Vegas line is currently, and then let's take a look at what the late kick model thinks. I spoiled this a little bit earlier in the week because our model really liked the game, and I already moved on it when it was at Penn State minus 4.5. So right now, the Caesars line, the Vegas line is Penn State minus 6. Our model is over a touchdown. It is Penn State minus 7.5. And I'm going to tell you really what that boils down to. Again, we are giving, I want to say 4.5 to 4.75 points for home field here. And what that was telling me early in the week is if we subtract that, the initial line, the one that we bet, the one that I handed out for the Ramen Noodle Express, would indicate minus that home field, these are dead even teams. I don't believe that to be the case. That's what that line was telling me. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe Penn State is a better team, not by a country mile, but I believe they are the better team. So upsets happen all the time. How would the upset happen here? And I had to ask myself, what do I think is more likely? Do I think it's more likely that Bo Nix goes on the road and does something that he hasn't shown me the ability to do? Or is it more likely that Penn State is just a little bit better and has a few margins here and there, and they just outlast Auburn, hard-fought game, 4-quarter game, and they win it something like 26-20, 26-17, somewhere in there? I think the latter is the more likely. And so I'm going to go with Penn State to win, and I'm also going to go with Penn State to cover. And we got it earlier in the week at 4.5, and that is a Ramen Noodle Express pick, which we normally don't do in our game breakdowns, but in this case, it just happened to coincide. So we will take Penn State to win and Penn State to cover.